Hello and welcome to Shelf Life. I'm Kimberly Dykeman. Now, what's unique about this show is on each program we have an opportunity to bring you the freshest literature that's hitting the shelves today. And we do that by essentially introducing you to the real people behind these books. We allow them to share their real purpose behind writing them. And we showcase the real perspective of their message that says that it's both timely and timeless. And we can kind of all take it and put it in our pocket and learn from it. Now, our guest today is a pretty phenomenal man. He's a graduate of West Point. He is a highly decorated former Army Ranger captain who led the rescue at Roberts Ridge. He's a survivor of the War on Terror and an active educator on post-traumatic stress disorder. He is the young author of 2 Wars, and his name is Nate Self. What I'd like you to do is sort of share with us the format of the book itself, when it actually begins and how you end up and how you take us through those days and years, actually.
Well, 2 Wars opens with a very intense scene of us flying into to this mountaintop in Afghanistan at 10,000 feet to rescue a Navy SEAL. The first couple minutes on the ground when we got shot down. And then it pulls back to when I was a teenager preparing to go to West Point. It follows my time as a cadet at West Point, and then going to Germany as a lieutenant in Kosovo on a deployment, and then becoming a Ranger platoon leader, and eventually deploying to Afghanistan, where we'll meet back up with the prologue of the book. And then it carries on after that battle. It breaks very abruptly and moves into a fairly disjointed representation of what my life was like after combat.
Okay, let's go back to the start of the story for a minute. Not long after 9/11, you got a call to deploy to Afghanistan. Tell us about that, Nate.
Well, I deployed to Afghanistan a couple months after 9/11, and I had a little boy at home who was 2 months old when I left. So I was leading America's sons in battle and had one at home that I was thinking about every second of the day. And after a couple months there, we had an operation called Operation Anaconda, which was a fairly significant amount of al-Qaeda fighters in southeastern Afghanistan. And one night during that battle, I got a call in my headquarters that was really a distress call. We were called, my platoon of Rangers that I led, about 50 men, were called to rescue a Navy SEAL who had fallen into the hands of the enemy.
So tell us about the mission itself.
Well, the SEAL, his name is Neil Roberts. He had fallen into enemy hands, an al-Qaeda strongpoint on top of this mountain. So they were there, and they had dug in for days waiting for this fight. And when they tried to land on top of this mountain, they came under heavy fire, and he landed in amongst the enemy and was taken captive immediately. We flew to that vicinity in the cover of darkness, but when we got there, the sun was almost up. And when we were about 20 feet off the ground, we were ambushed in the air. The man on my right was killed right next to me. The man on my left was killed as I was in between the two of them. And when I got to the ramp of the Chinook to exit, 2 of my Rangers were dead on the ramp.
So how did the mission end?
I called in the Air Force to drop bombs literally on our own positions. And that helped us to gain momentum. Even after we'd lost another American due to an enemy counterattack, we were able to bring everyone home.
So you made it through one war, the first war, so to speak. But then you had what you've pretty much labeled as the second war. I want you to share with us and describe what that world is like to us that don't really know how to qualify what PTSD actually means.
You come back and it just seems like there's so much here that it doesn't matter. And it's hard to adjust. And you know, that's the first part of coming home, that veterans notice that something is different. Is that they feel a little disillusioned, or they can't relate to the people around them. For me, less than a year later, I deployed again, this time to Iraq.
Okay.
And so it was there that I really started to feel the effects of combat. nightmares. I was preoccupied. I started to get afraid. I wasn't necessarily afraid of my own physical harm, but I was afraid that I might not come home this time, that I'd lived through a circumstance that I probably shouldn't have lived through, and then if I kept pushing my luck, that one of these times I would leave a widow and a boy with no father to look to. And so that fear consumed me. And when I came home, I got out of the Army pretty quickly. And that's when I really felt greater effects of the combat. I think my mind had a chance to start thinking about what I had been through. I had problems with anger. I was hypervigilant. I was paranoid. I was always afraid that someone was trying to take one of my family members. I'd wake up in the middle of the night thinking someone was in the house. Any loud noises just set me off right away, and still startles me. And I saw that the person that I had become outside the Army was someone different, and I grew to hate that person very quickly. And I reached the point where I wanted to kill that person. And so, alone, I found myself sitting with a pistol, contemplating suicide, a pistol that my Rangers had given to me when I left the unit.
So even after all the accolades, the Silver Star, the Purple Heart, the warm embrace of your family, the invitation from President Bush to the White House, even after all of this, it doesn't sound like it really had much of an impact in softening your heart, because it was more of what was going on in your head that was taking over, so to speak.
If it wasn't for my family, they came around me and formed a tight perimeter around me, and they weren't letting anyone in or anyone out. And my wife is just amazingly forgiving and understanding. She's just so gracious throughout this whole experience. If I didn't have that, I wouldn't be here.
Tell us a little bit about what you're doing to help others.
Well, I'm fortunate enough right now to still be working for the Army, not in uniform, but I'm working on a couple projects for the Army where we're interacting with young officers every day. And that's such a privilege to be able to listen to them and their stories, to process them with them together, work on leadership development for these young officers, and then take those experiences and use those to shed some light for our cadets upcoming that are going to be lieutenants very soon on what they're going to face. So I'm still actively involved in the first war, the one that
Right.
that we have ongoing, the very physical war.
Right.
But from the second war, both with my church and a couple of other ministries, and just directly involved with veterans coming home, I'm trying to do my part to serve them, to help them process their experiences and make sense of them, and to help them find answers for themselves. We all fight two wars, one that's very, very present, flesh and blood, and another that's a spiritual one. And no matter where you are in those two wars, you'll find yourself in need of rescue at some point in time. And knowing that, once you've been rescued, you should also be prepared to go and find those that need it as well.
Thank you so much. It is absolutely an honor to shake the hand of someone that's defended the country that I am allowed to live in.
Thank you.
You very much. So for those of you that don't immediately scoop up the book, you want to read some more, or you want a little bit of both, they can go to www.twowars.com and learn about you and read more about the book and the up-and-coming projects and more literature, hopefully. So thank you again, folks, for joining us on Shelf Life. Again, I'm Kimberly Dykman, and we'll see you soon.